We be live. Hi, everyone. Make sure you like the stream right now. Subscribe if you're new here because I am going to show you today that the very foundation of Islam is based upon lies. And I am going to explain this to you in a very easy to understand way. The origins of Islam, the birthplace of Islam, all of it is the version that has been told to us by Islam and Muslims and Islamic scholars are all based on lies. And this is not so hard to understand. And the evidence is all there. And guys, this is the easiest way to completely show that Islam is based upon lies. I mean, you could there's a lot of ways to go about doing this. For example, you could look at Islamic teachings and show people how Islamic teachings are, not moral, but there's a lot of dancing around there. This is based on archaeological evidence. This is based on things that we have in our hand, and there is no way if you challenge people to show you why this what I'm telling you is wrong, they are going to fail, and they're going to so objectively fail, because when it comes to Islamic teachings, a lot of people are moral relativists, and there is no objective thing within the universe that you could point to that tells them that, oh no, they're wrong. It's just going to be a matter of opinion. But when it comes to the birthplace of Islam and where Islam started, and this is not a matter of opinion anymore. Either this is there, the evidence is there, or the evidence is not there. And when it comes to showing to the people anywhere, again, I'm telling you, I have shown this to many Muslims, and many times this has caused doubt more than anything else. So this is a powerful weapon that we have in our hands, and there are other people, academics, explaining this. But I am going to try to explain this in a very, very easy way to understand, and show you how simple it is to first understand it, and to explain it to other people. Oh, Kenny, thank you so much, Kenny. We got a super chat. We haven't even started yet, and we got a super chat. I really appreciate that. Okay, guys, it's important that you all learn this, and you also learn how to explain it in a very easy way. But I'm going to. Oh, Kenny, saying my pleasure. Kenny, thank you so much, Kenny. You're amazing. You're amazing. Let me know if you want me to do more shows like this, because this is a huge part of the battle for us to be able to explain this together as a community here. Gene is. Oh, by the way, thank you, Gene, as well. Gene is going to be starring a lot of your comments for me to take a look at and respond to at some points. But throughout the show, if we ever get any super chats, I will definitely check those out. Oh yeah, Flying Robot Duck is saying absolutely. So basically, okay, so you guys want me to do more shows like this. Let me actually let's all get on the same page for us to, because a lot of people might even not know what the Islamic position is. So let's go through the Islamic position and then show you why that is wrong with evidence based, and tell you what the evidence is, and also how significant this is. Guys, if anything that we say here today is true, that means the entirety of Islam is gone. Like, there is, it doesn't even matter what this Quranic verse said or what the Hadith said. Everything about Islam is completely based upon a false version of history. As I look at, so let me actually stop and go through the what we have been told by Islam and Muslims, right? By Islamic historians, right? So Islamic tradition, what does that say? Mecca was a, so we want to start with Mecca. Okay, let me actually, before the stories, Mecca, Islam started in Mecca, Muhammad was in Mecca, Muhammad lived in Mecca. Uh, when he was in Mecca, he was born in Mecca, and the God's verses from the Quran was revealed to him while he was in Mecca, right? Or around that area. So this is the birthplace. This is where everything started. And to show how Islam had nothing to do with Mecca, Islam didn't come from Mecca. And if you could show that, that means that Muhammad's story is fake, the revelation is fake, the Quran is fake, the whole religion is fake. If you could show that Islam didn't come from Mecca, and if you could show that this whole movement started somewhere completely else. If that is a lie, then all of it is a lie. I mean, the Quran is a lie. The Quran, Muhammad's story is a lie. All of the revelation is a lie. All the teachings of Islam are lies. Oh, what, guys? We have 2 more super chats, right? So let me respond to the super chats. Oh, I should actually put this over here instead. So Ginga is saying, have you watched David Wood's debunk of fake Muhammad theory? No, but David Wood, I saw him debating Robert Spencer, and David Wood didn't have anything in that debate. He was just basically calling it a conspiracy theory, even though this has been confirmed by the most expert academics in early Islamic history. I mean, Ginga, like, you have to choose. David Wood is a good YouTuber and a good content creator against Islamic teachings, but you have David Wood on one hand, and then you have major academics from major universities in the world in early Islamic history on the other side. So, am I appealing to authority? Yes, but when it comes to uh, reasoning, like when it comes to logical fallacies, the actual logical fallacy is appeal to false authority. I'm not appealing to false authority. I'm appealing to credible authority, which is not a logical fallacy, right? So there's that. I mean, guys, like, again, what's David Wood's expertise? Every study that we're getting in this topic shows that this field shows that I mean, think about this. When it comes to Christianity, Judaism, and Hinduism, every time we looked into their history, we saw that the academics and archaeologists realized that the history of those religions were different from what their religion was said its history is itself. So it's quite strange for people to suggest that Islam is different from other religions. In every religion, actually, the actual history, once you get the evidence, is different from the history that they told of themselves. But here's the thing that we have to be careful. A lot of people, again, I don't want to accuse David Wood of this, because it's not like on purpose. It might be something that you're not aware of. But because we spent a lot of time showing how bad and evil Muhammad and Islamic teachings are, then if we show that the whole story is completely made up, then a lot of people are like, hey, wait, so we basically hated on this guy that his story is even completely made up. So you are saying, like, there's no Muhammad to hate, there is no Aisha, there's no Muhammad, all of this is all of the stories are up in the air. So it just seems like years and years of talking against Islam is just basically talking about stories that never even happened. So it might question your whole activism. So some people might be motivated knowingly or unknowingly to basically say all of this is false. However, Muhammad doesn't have to be real for you to consider him some evil character, because I mean, you could hate Voldemort and call him evil. I mean, his story doesn't have to be real. You could basically condemn Muhammad's character. You don't have to. And also, let me actually respond to the super chat and then go to Asian American. Where I come from, marrying your daughter-in-law, adopted son or not, is considered incest. We call them, okay, Poway, I don't know, or Ash, I don't know, scratches. Okay. Well, thank you, Asian American, for the super chat. Let's actually get to the topic at hand. Okay, so what does the Islamic tradition say about Mecca? And again, the reason why I want to mention what the Islamic tradition is because if we could show that's wrong, that means the whole story is wrong. That's the whole story is wrong. Okay, so Islamic tradition says Mecca was a major trade city in Arabia. Again, a lot of you, I know a lot of ex-Muslims are watching this and they already know this. I have to go through this so for us to know what the claim is, and then show why it's wrong. Okay, it had a special religious shrine, the Kaaba. So the Kaaba, the cube-shaped building, was in Mecca, and this was in the way of a major trading route. And this Kaaba in Mecca was built by Abraham and Ishmael, which We call Ismail. So you guys call it Ishmael. So Abraham and Ishmael, they built the Kaaba. Mecca was full of polytheists, and there were a lot of idols there that people went there that were different gods. There were, for every religion, there was like a god for every religion, and polytheists went there to pray to their god. So basically, if you went to around the Kaaba, you could see that there's an idol of this god, there's an idol of that god. There was Allah as well. Allah had like three daughters. People prayed to Allah's daughters, and all of these things. And there were statues of Mother Mary for the Christians. There was everything. There was everything there. And at some point, Muhammad, even before he became a prophet, he was a monotheist. So he believed in an Abrahamic religion. I mean, this is a traditional story, okay? I'm not saying any of this is real. But at some point he became a prophet, so he came and preached to people that, yeah, guys, cut it out, stop praying to these other guys. And people are like, get the F out. And he did get the F out. He went to Yathrib, now known as Medina, and at that point he went there and he raised the army, and then he came back to Mecca, and like, okay, now you're gonna basically bend the knee and pray only Allah, or there's going to be a big price to pay for that. And we were like, okay, oh crap, now you have an army. Okay, I guess we Muslim now. I guess we submit. Okay, I guess we submit now because you have a giant army. Before you didn't have a giant army, so we told you to get the F out. Now that you have a giant army, we're all Muslim. That's how it works, I guess, right? Um, After years of preaching and exile, Muhammad conquered Mecca and became the holiest city in Islam. So, by the way, this is not, according to Muslims, this is not Muhammad changing the point of the Kaaba and the point of Mecca. This is Muhammad, according to Muslims, this is Muhammad bringing it back to what it's supposed to be, because Abraham and Ishmael created Kaaba, like they built the Kaaba for the point of worshiping the one true God, which is Allah. And then many years after Abraham and Ishmael died, people turned this holy area, I mean, this is the claim by Islam, okay, into a place for idol worship and paganism. And Muhammad, basically, the claim is that Muhammad brought it back to its former glory, and made it a center of monotheism again. But this was basically a very old, ancient building, according to Muslims, that went back all the way to Abraham. And this, because it was a shrine, it was a major economic hub. Like, people went through the Mecca to come here and do trade, and it was busy. It was a major trading route, and people went there to pray to their gods. And yeah, so that's the story. That's the story. And now we're gonna go and tell you exactly why all of this is false. But let me see. There's a super chat. Rafa is saying, did something happen to Susie? No, guys. Susie is traveling for her work-related stuff, and yeah, so she's busy. Uh, Please, guys, respect Susie's personal life. But also thank you for the super chat. Okay, she's not doing Atheist Republic full time. I'm doing Atheist Republic, I mean, semi full time, right? So you have to understand she has other things to do as well. But she will be back. But yeah, but please respect her when she needs to do other things. Okay, please. All right, so let's go back to the story at hand. The version, so this version comes from Islamic sources written over 100 years after Muhammad's death. So remember, all of the stories about Mecca, Muhammad, Kaaba, we didn't have any all the information that Muslims claim to be true beyond doubt, without any doubt, was written. Again, we will go over at some point. I will do a show to show how much all of these stories, how distant these stories of Muhammad and early Islamic history, according to Muslims, are from Muhammad's time, from the time that Muhammad was supposed to be living. Right, so these are 100 years. They are in biographies and hadiths and histories. By the way, guys, let me know in the chat if you are with me, because once I explain all of this, I'm going to package it in a very easy summary for you to understand and give it back to you so that we all understood. I'm just painting a picture before I go through the evidence to tell you why all of this is wrong. All right, you're all with me? Yeah. Okay, you're all with me? You guys are all with me? Okay, you're with me. Fantastic. In the chat, people are saying we're with you. Fantastic. Good, good, good. All right. So what's the problems with that story? There are many. There are many. I will give you 4 problems with that story, and then I'll tell you what really happened and why Mecca became the center of Islam, even though Mecca had nothing to do with Islam for a very long time. For a very long time, this whole movement started somewhere completely else, and then eventually people rewrote history and made it seem like it started in Mecca. But how do we know beyond reasonable doubt that Islam did not start in Mecca? I'll give you 4 reasons, okay? And feel free to challenge me in the chat if you guys want to. 1, no one else mentioned Mecca. The Greeks, the Romans, the Persians, the Syrians, Christian writers, Jewish, nobody wrote about Mecca. Do you guys understand how crazy that is? Especially the freaking Romans. You know, the Romans were obsessed with documenting things. Okay. Okay, so we're talking about empires. We're talking about the Byzantine Empire, and we're talking about the Persian, which is the Sassanid Empire. And we had people in Jerusalem and everywhere else obsessed with 2 things: writing history and documenting history. But more than the scholars obsessed with writing history, because guys, history is also soft power, right? So history is not just like, oh, we're just curious about history. History is a source of your soft power because it shows your genesis, it shows your origins, it shows your legitimacy for power, right? It shows your superiority. It's the story of your people. That's why scholars were constantly being they had patrons by the rulers to constantly write about history. I mean, the histories that they were writing was not very accurate sometimes, okay? But they were writing the shit out of that stuff. You know what I mean? Even if the histories were not accurate, if there was a major trading route going into Mecca, they would have been referring to it. So other than the historians writing stuff, there were these other group of people who recorded stuff for a completely different reason, and their lives depended on it. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the merchants. We're talking about the people who were doing trades. Do you understand how the merchants, the people who were involved in trade, how important it was that they had accurate documents of where the next port is, where the next trading route is? They had maps, they had documents, they had to know exactly where to go, or else they could die, right? They could be left in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so people involved in trade, they had records of major trading routes because their entire livelihood, guys, back then the people didn't have Google Maps. Okay, they didn't have phones to call each other or send SOS signals if they were stranded in the middle of nowhere. The information they had on their records and their maps before they left an area was the only thing that could help them either become rich because they made a huge bet on something that they bought in one city selling very well in another city. It could be the difference between them becoming very rich or freaking dead because they're in the middle of sea nowhere, and the port that they were supposed to get to was actually not as close as they thought, or they're in the middle of nowhere and they're now being attacked by uh, the people robbing them because they missed exactly where the trade route is, or how safe a city is, or whether the empire is providing security in this trade route or not. So this is life and death for people involving in trade, for them exactly to know where to go. So we have a lot of maps from these areas, and none of them mention Mecca. It's impossible, guys. It's impossible for Mecca to be a major trading route, which is officially the narrative of Islam, and you finding nothing. And again, it's not like the other Arab areas were not mentioned. Many other places were mentioned. I mean, Yathrib, who Muslims refer to as a major part of their story, that's mentioned. Petra is mentioned. Yathrib is mentioned, and some other trading hubs around that area is mentioned. Mecca, it's not mentioned. Guys, do you understand how unlikely this is? I want you to understand how unlikely it is for Mecca to be a major important city and it not being mentioned. Flying Robot Duck is saying, did it exist at all? I don't know. I mean, there might have been like a few people. I mean, that whole area was filled with cube-like structures where people just went around, basically prayed to. Like, it was all over the place. So this Mecca might have been one of the many places that had just a cube there, right? And then eventually they destroyed most of the other cubes, and they made it acted like this was the only one. I think like maybe that area was just, there were these people all over at the Hejaz area, and they were in the middle of desert without it being a major trading route, and they're just nomads doing their thing and going around cube-like structures. And then just at some point, I'll tell you at some point why one of these cube-like structures became such a big deal and became the so-called center of Islam. I'll tell you who did that. I mean, a lot of you guys might know who I'm referring to, especially our members, because if you're a member of this channel, we did a stream regarding a civil war, which I'm going to refer to today, which was Zubair. You guys know Zubair. Zubair is the person responsible for making Mecca such a big deal, which I will explain very soon. But everyone is with me right now, right? Okay, we're all on the same page, because I want to make sure that I'm talking. I basically took all the academic work on this topic, and I'm talking about it in a very simple way. Like, I don't want to make it look like this is a Harvard lecture or something, because when I listen to all these academics talking about it, it's fascinating. But I'm like, this is not very consumable for people who haven't studied this or are not familiar with this. So let me know if we're all on the same page here, okay? Yeah, and also get Kaaba is in Arabic, Muka'ab just means cube. So Kaaba and Muka'ab, I think they have the same root word. So it's just basically a cube-like structure. Okay. So far, this is reason one. Again, this is just one of 4 reasons that there. Even when we have records about all the trade routes, it doesn't mention Mecca, right? So that's suspicious. That's strange. If Mecca was a major city, why or a trade hub, why it's not mentioned? So that's number 1. Okay, Darker is saying we be following. Well, that's great. Using my own language, my own way of wording it. All right, so number 2, there's no archaeological evidence. And guys, when it comes to archaeological evidence, absence of evidence is actually evidence of absence. I know a lot of times that's a logical fallacy. It's true that in many other areas, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. But when it comes to archaeological, when you're making a claim about the major hub of trade, that's actually evidence of absence. Let me explain. We find ancient ruins and artifacts in many other Arabian cities, but in Mecca, we find nothing older than 700 CE. Do you understand how impossible that is? Guys, anywhere else with even the smallest amount of activity, I'm not talking about being a major trading center. I'm talking about the smallest activity. If you go digging, if you go do any archaeological investigation, you will find some old shit. You will find some old stuff. You will find some coins. You will find some pottery. You will find some inscriptions. You will find some very old buildings that you could basically show that they're very old. There is none of that. None of that in Mecca. No inscriptions, no old buildings, no coins, no pottery, nothing to show Mecca was important before Islam. Not only did it nothing to show that Mecca was important before Islam, nothing to show it was even even relevant. Like forget about a major trading route. It seems it seems like it was nothing there at all. Like guys, we find like evidence of like small cities with some minor activity, but this is a major like no coins. That is, yeah, exactly, anti-Islam. The chat is saying sus indeed, exactly. That's a huge red flag for a supposedly major ancient city. Guys, like if you go to Jerusalem, if you just dig a little bit, you're gonna hit so many, like so many evidence of how ancient this place is. All right, but I mean, forget Jerusalem. Jerusalem was a major city. Even in some other Arab cities, like Yathrib. Let's just go Yathrib, like which is a major part of the Islamic story. There's so much evidence over there. Like this is why I'm saying absence of evidence here is evidence of absence, because it takes a miracle. It takes an absolute, it takes divine intervention for you to be able to have this much activity around that region, having wars, trade, buildings, commerce, everything, and somehow erase all sorts of your evidence there. I mean, even like if a murderer today, you do a crime, you want to clean up all your mess, you're gonna leave something behind. And these people weren't actively trying to clean up their own the evidence for their existence, and somehow you find nothing there. That's a huge red flag. And also, this is why Saudi Arabia doesn't allow anymore, once they realize this, to do any archaeological investigations there anymore. And they also ruined and basically cemented over a lot of the places. Like, for example, in Jerusalem, for example, if you want to build a building or something and you want to dig deep, the archaeologists were gonna come. They have to be allowed to get in, and when you dig, they were to be the people who are going to be there to see what we are going to get when you dig, right? But Saudi Arabia is like, yeah, we're gonna have none of that here. So archaeologists are not welcome here. We're gonna dig. We're gonna build giant buildings in around Mecca, and we're gonna allow no archaeologists to come look at what we're gonna find when we're digging, and we're going to cement over that entire thing before anybody gets to get any access to that. So Saudi Arabia has realized how devastating this is, and again, uh, when it comes to Saudi Arabia, you have to understand that this is a major, major source of their income, the pilgrimage. So any challenge to the position of Mecca is devastating for Saudi Arabia. So that's why it's very important for them to keep this hidden. Yeah, Larry is being sarcastic, saying, "Armin, you're too critical. There is at least as much archaeology in Mecca than in a Mormon excavation in USA." Exactly. Yes, their history is as accurate as the Mormons say about their history. Okay, so that's number two. Number three, the Mecca doesn't even make any sense for a trade route, right? The ancient trade route actually went through that made sense if you look at people who are experts on this topic. It went from Yemen, Najran, Taima, Petra, Gaza. That made, like, again, I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but I was showing like some experts, I think from Harvard, like people in early Islamic history, were showing that the trade route that was recorded was actually the trade route that made absolute sense. And they brought up, it's interesting because, there's uh, people who are historical experts, and there are people who are trade experts in modern trade and commerce, and there are people who are experts in co- historical trade and commerce. It's one thing to be an expert in economics in our modern economics, but there are certain people that actually study economics of the ancient times. And it's not that they're just looking at what the history was, they're actually like calculating the profit, the financial interest, the investments, the return on investments of things that happened, I don't know, 1400 years ago, which is fascinating that some people actually go do the calculations and the cost of, I don't know, the camel, the cost of the ship, the physical barriers, the risk assessment of getting robbed in the way, the things that were basically acted like insurance policies, the empire's involvement in providing security, everything. Like, people because we don't have exact records, there are people who spend their lives trying to come up with a calculation of all of this back then in ways that are fascinating. I mean, if I continue doing these shows, maybe we will get into that to show how do people come up with these calculations. But again, this goes into a lot of detail. But if you look at these experts, they're like, yeah, this is the trade route that makes sense. Mecca, I mean, there's a reason why Mecca is and it's not in the records as a major trading route, part of the trading route, because it made absolute no sense. It's way off the path in the middle of freaking nowhere, in the middle of a dry valley with no river, no farmland, no port. Why would people get out of their way to go through Mecca? I mean, if you look at the map, I mean, even if they want to go up that area, the sea makes more sense. The sea makes more sense. The sea is right next to them. Okay, there's no like you're in the middle of nowhere. Why would you use the camels to go through the deserts where the sea, the wind, you have free energy and you have less friction? You could go the same path through the sea. It makes absolutely no sense. And again, a lot of Muslims try to come up with an excuse for this by suggesting that no, listen. I mean, they went off their way because the Kaaba was treated as a shrine for people to pray to their gods. So people went out of their way to make sure that they are there to pray to those gods, and that's why it became a major trading route. And this is a complete misunderstanding of how anything works in history. They think like the gods were there first and people went out of, like, people are paying a heavier price, losing money, risking their lives to go through this area just to pray to the gods, and that's why it became a major trading hub. But everything we know about history, it works the other way around. If a location first becomes a major trading hub, then becomes a cultural or religious important cultural or religious center. It's not that it first becomes an important religious center and then it becomes a major trading route. That's not how any of this works. It wouldn't make sense for the traders to pass through Mecca. So that's reason number three. So the reason number two is that there's no record that this was a major trading route. No, that was reason number one. Reason number three is that it didn't even make any sense. Reason number four, which I know a lot of you, that's what you're here for, because that's one of the most interesting thing, was made famous by what's his name, Dan Gibson, right, in his documentary. And this is what a lot of people like to focus on because it's fascinating. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people focus on reason number four because they're not aware of the three reasons that I mentioned earlier. But this is fascinating. Reason number four is that early mosques, basically all the mosques. Yeah, a lot of you know what I'm gonna say because you watched the documentary. Early mosques didn't face Mecca. So in mosques there, like, have guys who here has been to a mosque and prayed in the mosque? I'm an ex-Muslim, so I know what I'm talking about, right? I mean, a lot of you are here on the chat are ex-Muslim, so you know what I'm talking about. So in the mosque, there's a qibla, direction to the qibla, right? Direction of prayer. So basically, points to the qibla. So every time you go to a mosque, you could see the entire mosque is structured in a way to point towards the Kaaba, because that's the direction you're supposed to be praying to, right? But when researchers looked at mosques from the first century of Islam, they noticed something very strange. They didn't point towards Mecca. Instead, they pointed towards, say it with me in the chat, they pointed towards Petra. They didn't point towards Mecca, they pointed towards Petra, which is an ancient city in Jordan. I know a lot of you are, no, not Jerusalem, not Jerusalem. They pointed towards Petra in Jordan. And I know a lot of people criticize this theory because they suggest, like, back then we didn't have that much of a accurate way of figuring out where to point to. These days, it's much easier to build the mosques properly in a way that it accurately points towards Mecca. Back then, they didn't have that. So if it's not exactly pointing towards Mecca, that doesn't say that the Mecca was not the major direction of the prayer, because maybe they weren't just accurate. The problem with this argument is that they were all pretty accurate in their direction towards Petra. Okay, guys, let's be fair. Either Petra or somewhere close to Petra. It's just, the point is that I've noticed many of the people, many of the experts in early Islamic history disagree whether or not it was Petra or not Petra. But they seem to be agreeing that it was not Mecca and it was close to the Petra area, either Petra or close to the Petra area. And the argument that, well, back then these people were not just as accurate, then why were they so consistent in pointing towards that direction? All of the mosques in the first 100 years of Islam were pointing towards that direction. If it's a question of inaccuracy, if it's the explanation is inaccuracy, then they should be all over the place. They're not all over the place. Like, some of them should be pointing to Jerusalem, some of them should be pointing to Mecca, some of them should be pointing to Petra, some of them should be pointing to in the middle of nowhere. That's not the case. They all seem to be consistently pointing to the same direction. Anti-Islam is saying, so Petra is the special place for Muslims. Okay, anti-Islam, this is not even Islam, but like, we're talking about a time where this is when Muslims claim that we had an Islam. But we know, I mean, our members of this channel know, people who are members, because I'm doing a lot of member-only streams on this topic, that we don't even have an Islam in this time. Like, Islam was created much later than people say it was created. This is proto-Islam. This is baby Islam. This is something that will eventually become Islam. Okay? So let's continue. So when researchers looked at old mosques, so this is reason number 4 from their early century, I said they noticed something odd. Many mosques didn't point towards Mecca. Instead, they pointed towards Petra, an ancient city in Jordan. This suggests the original direction of prayer, Qibla or Qibla, might not have been Mecca, right? But it's interesting because I will tell you what happened now. So this is what we know so far. It shows Mecca was not a big deal. But the stories that we ex-Muslims in the chat know what I'm going to talk about. We heard the Islamic story is that the original direction of prayer was Jerusalem, and then it changed into Mecca. But there's no mention of Petra. Okay, so that's what we as when we were Muslims, this is what when we grew up, this is what we were told in school, in our Islamic schools, that at some point Muslims were praying towards Jerusalem, and God came at some point like, guys, everybody, we have a new command. I have a new command. From now, you pray towards Mecca, and people. And it says there in the Quranic teachings that people made fun of Muhammad, like, why are you paying? Will you pray towards Jerusalem? Why are you praying towards Mecca now? And then God basically says like, hey, I'm God, I could change anything I want, so f off, right? So it seems that that explanation in the Quran was a response to Abdul Malik's legitimacy, which I will get to, when because he was making Jerusalem was supposed to be the major city. So early Islamic history is a competition between Jerusalem and Mecca. The Arabs who were building a religion that was not Islam yet, at first they were building a religion that was basically a Jewish Christian cult that was eventually a sect that was eventually becoming Islam, centered on Jerusalem, and Zubair, who wanted to center that on Mecca. So early Islamic history was Arabs fighting between the authority of Jerusalem, the religious authority of Jerusalem, the political authority of Damascus, okay, that on one side, versus the both political and religious authority of Mecca, only because Zubair ran away there from the Umayyads and he was hiding there. So he was like, hey, the city I'm in, that's the center of our newfound religion, which I will get into what all of this means very soon. But you're with me so far? But the whole idea of like, hey, God said that don't make fun of Muhammad. God said that we could change the direction of prayer, and God can basically change the direction, change stars if he wanted to, change the entire world if he wanted to. So he could change the direction. So if you make fun of Muhammad, you're making fun of Allah basically and his ability to change things. However, this was not about Muhammad. This was not about Allah either. This was about people making fun of Abdul Malik, the Umayyad Caliph, and basically Hajjaj, his main commander, putting it in the Quran that, hey, if you make fun of this change in direction, you're making fun of Muhammad and Allah. People think the entities that we completely made up. There is no Muhammad, there is no Allah, there is Zubair, there is Abdul Malik, and there's Hajjaj. Anyway, let me actually make it easy for you guys to understand what I'm talking about, right? So what's the real story? So the thing, not Islam, because we could say did Islam started near Petra, not Mecca? Well, whatever started near Petra. So let's back up. I just gave you a lot of information that might be confusing, especially for people who are not members. Guys, I discuss a lot of more of these topics for our members. So if you want to become, if you want to see more of these discussions, being a member is a good way to do that. Let me actually see if there's anybody else. Yeah. So, but let me actually simplify it for people who are not familiar with this topic, right? So the thing that eventually became Islam might have started either in Petra or around the Petra area, around 610 CE. Imagine, for example, this whole sect, this Judo-Christian sect, focused with a heavy emphasis on monotheism, being formed around the Petra area. And we're talking about Christians who have been influenced by many years before this, the Roman Empire officially canonized Christianity as a religion that believes in the Trinity, and made categorize everyone else that doesn't believe in the Trinity as heretics, and people who need to be silenced or fought against, right? Basically. And there were these ideas that the Roman Empire didn't approve, went into closer to the borders of the Roman Empire. And one of those areas are basically around the Petra area, for example. And it started these Christian sects, these Arabs were influenced many years earlier by people, by Christians who didn't believe that Jesus, didn't believe in the Trinity, didn't believe that God could have a son, didn't believe that Jesus could be a God, and believed that Jesus, they believed in Jesus, they focused on Jesus, but they believed that Jesus was a prophet of God, not a son of God or God. And they called themselves believers or mu'minun. Right? Let me see how much more time I have. I have time, right? So this is forming over there. And this is why, by the way, why Islam is so obsessed with the concept of Tawheed. Because it all started by the sect of Christianity that was a response to the Trinity. Right? That was an anti the Trinity. Right? So the original holy site might have been Petra, a well-known city on trade routes, with Nabatean religious traditions, which we will have to do a stream on just that at some point. These religious traditions around that time, and basically we had cube-shaped shrines everywhere. Like I don't know if we had cube-shaped shrines in uh, Mecca or not, or eventually did they just copy what they had in the Petra area or not. I have to look into that to see what the experts are saying on that. But at least around the Petra area, we had cube-shaped shrines. Okay, we know we have. I mean, we still could go find some that are still left there, cube-shaped shrines over there. Okay, so maybe like Mecca, the whole in Mecca, eventually when Mecca became a big deal because of Zubair, maybe eventually they just made the Kaaba, copying what they had around the Petra area. So why Petra, by the way? Petra was wealthy, it was established, it was already a religious center, it had structures similar to the Kaaba, and it was known to the world. Actually, guys, it's beautiful. If you go to Petra, they have these carved buildings into the rocks, into the mountain. I wish I could go, but I'm an ex-Muslim and I don't want to go to an Islamic country. But if you're not an ex-Muslim that has content against Islam on the internet, consider going. It's actually gorgeous, right? Okay, so that's around the 610 CE area. Let's move forward to 680. And we are basically 50 years, around 50 years after when they say Muhammad died. Muhammad died allegedly around 50 years. And we have a civil war. This is after Muawiyah. So, guys, remember, if you want to understand the actual history of Islam, the parts of Islam is history of Islam, which is historic, is Muawiyah and after. That means no Muhammad. So Muhammad is not historic. No Muhammad, no Ali, no Hassan, no Hussein, no Fatima, no Aisha, no Umar, no Abu Bakr, no Osman, none of that. Okay, so it's Muawiyah and after. Muawiyah, which is basically the founder of the Umayyad dynasty. Again, for people who might not be familiar, if we want to categorize Islamic history into 4 parts at least, before the Ottoman Empire. So let's go Muhammad's time, allegedly, Muhammad's life, and then the Rashidun, which is the rightly guided ones, which is the 4 caliphs. And then that's period 2. Period 3 is the Umayyad dynasty, starting with Muawiyah. And then period 4 is the Abbasid dynasty. So I'm saying out of these 4, 1 and 2 is gone. 1 and 2 is not historic. The Muhammad's lifetime part is completely made up. The Rashidun, the 4 caliphs, that is completely made up. Well, not completely. It's like 99% made up. And then we start the actual history of Islam starts with the Umayyad dynasty. So now imagine we're in 680, 50 years after Muhammad allegedly died, and now Muawiyah, he died also now in this 680, and we have a power struggle. So the Umayyad dynasty just started, and people are fighting over power. The main guy that is challenging the Umayyad dynasty right now, what's his name? Say it with me. Ibn Zubayr. Ibn Zubayr, guys, this is the main. Zubayr and Hajjaj are the founders of Islam, as people know if they watch my member only stream. It's not Muhammad, it's Zubayr and Hajjaj. Okay, so Zubayr is a rebel leader, Ibn Zubayr, Ibn al-Zubayr, against the authority of the Umayyads in Damascus, and he basically takes over the Mecca. And by the way, guys, are you with me? So we have the center of power in Damascus by the Umayyad dynasty, and Ibn Zubayr goes into the middle of freaking nowhere. And again, we have to do a stream about why the hell did he go into Mecca? If Mecca was not a trading route and it was in the middle of nowhere, he seemed to be running like he didn't have as much power as the Umayyads with their military and everything. So he was kind of on the run. So he basically went into the middle of the desert in Mecca, and he over there he claimed that I'm the caliph, I am the religious authority, and people are like, huh? Oh, what? I mean, look at the Umayyads there in Damascus. They have Jerusalem. You're in the middle of a freaking desert. What makes you the caliph? What makes you the religious authority? So we were like, because this is the place our religion started. This place that I happen to have found myself trapped in is exactly where the founder of our religion just came from this area. Okay. Okay. Like, huh? Yes, exactly. And people are like, what are you talking about? And but by the way, Zubair was a great marketing. No, people actually took him seriously. Okay, this is why the Umayyads were kind of worried, because the Umayyad dynasty was not very good at religious marketing at first. They learned that from Zubair. I mean, this is a new empire. They didn't have their own religious branding. Everything like these were some Arabs that would basically manage to take over areas of the Persian Empire and the Roman Empire, and they're like, "Oh shit, we be empire now." We used to be Arabs used to be anti-imperialists when the empires stopped paying them for doing their proxy wars. The Persian Empire and the Roman empires used to pay them to fight the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire, and at some point they ran out of money because of the plague and also years of war. And then the Arabs basically became anti-imperialist, and then they were so successful at being anti-imperialist that they became so big and their territory grew so much. And at some point, they were like, "Hey, I am the empire now. We are the empire now." Okay, okay. Oh crap! And they're like, "But we don't know how to be empire. We have no idea how to do this." I mean, look at the Persian Empire, the Roman Empire. They have their own religion. They have their own Genesis story. They have their own superiority complex. They have their own language. But we are empire, and we are basically copying other people. Like during Muawiyah's time, like we everything is being written in either Greek or Persian. Our coins have crosses on them or fire temples on them. Everything is either Christian or Zoroastrian. We're not using our language. We don't have our story. We don't have our religion, and they thought that okay, we're just so successful at military raids that should be good enough, right? So this is the point where the Umayyads start learning that hard power is not good enough. You will lose your legitimacy very quickly if you don't also have soft power. And Ibn Zubair, because he didn't have hard power, he was a very zealot, religious, charismatic person that was basically trying to challenge the Umayyad dynasty with his soft power. And the Umayyad dynasty under Abdul Malik, which is the new caliph of the Umayyad dynasty, they're like, huh, this let's first of all end this person. Let's basically F him up, but also let's copy him. This might be what we need. At first, okay, so let's actually go back. So this rebel leader Al Zubair takes control of Mecca, and he claims he's the caliph, and this is the center of everything. At first, the Umayyad dynasty doesn't learn. So let's go. This was 680. Let's go to 3 years after 683. 683. By the way, guys, are you enjoying this? Because I think this is a lot more fun than a lot of people realize. Like, when I'm reading this academic work of all these people, I'm like, why are not they? This is fascinating. Why are they not explaining it in how in? They should turn it into a story. Like they should like, oh, this coin over here shows this, and like, yeah, but the implications of that is fascinating. And instead of just like making an academic, somebody actually should come and explain the story of it. Okay, but let me anyways, let me know in the chat if you're as fascinated as I am, because this is very interesting to me. Right, so let's go to 3 years later, 683. The Umayyad troops basically siege Mecca, and accidentally, apparently, they burned the Kaaba. Okay, and Muslims are shocked because God's house was destroyed. I mean, not Muslims, the proto-Muslims, the people who are eventually will be named as Muslims, because at that time the name Islam or Muslims was not being used as the label for these people. Right? They called themselves not Muslim. They called themselves believers. In fact, yeah, I'm not going to get into that right now. I mean, even if you read the Quran, it's very clear that a Muslim is not used as a label of the people of God, is used as a way to refer to the people who are submitting to this religion, even without believing. If you read the Quran, you can see that Muslim is not the label of these people. It's Mu'minun who's a label of these people. But let me get back to the topic. Right? So these people are shocked. Like, oh, Zubair said this is the house of God, but it was burned. Okay, so has the divine favor collapsed? Right? Is this like, is Zubair not the man of God that we thought he is? Right? And this is what Abdul Malik. I mean, people say Abdul Malik's genius move, but I don't think it's Abdul Malik's genius move. I think his main advisor, he's commander of his army, Hajjaj. He's the main guy behind doing all the thinking. He's the genius guy behind all of this. Which, guys, you should watch the stream I did on this if you remember. Which I said, which is, what is the title of that stream? About these two guys, about the people who actually founded Islam. Let me actually go find the name of that stream. I did it I did it 8 days ago. It's called Islam was invented by these two men, not Muhammad. Right, so I get into the details of that more on that member only stream. Right, but again, let's get back. Right, so Umayyad troops siege Mecca and accidentally burned the Kaaba. Muslims, so-called Muslims, are shocked. They're like, how is what is the divine favor has collapsed? Abdul Malik basically makes a 4D chess move, a 4D, a genius move here. He says that he's the caliph in Damascus, but Mecca is in. Again, this is at this point the genius move is not to make Mecca the center yet. Okay, because even though they burned the Kaaba down, Mecca is still not in their hand. Right, so he says like Zubair is saying, Mecca is the holy center of us Arabs. Nah, it's Jerusalem, because I just built, said with me in the chat, I just built the Dome of the Rock. So again, it's interesting because the early versions of this religion was actually claiming that Mecca what? Mecca. Okay, so a lot of people think that Islam started with Mecca, but Islam started with saying attacking Mecca. Islam started this movement started with responding to the challenge of Mecca being the center of our religion as Arabs. The center of our religion is Jerusalem, and they had Kaaba in Mecca. I have Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, and look, it's glorious. Look how beautiful it is. That's just a cube. It's a cube. It doesn't even shine. Look at mine. It's shiny. It's shiny. It's bigger. It's glorious. It has a dome. Guys, building cubes is easy. Building domes is difficult. It's Persian. Do you know why it's Persian? Because is domes. Again, guys, every time you see a mosque and you see that dome on the mosque, that's not Islam. That's Sassanid. That's Persian. So if you look at the Dome of the Rock, the bottom part of it is actually the architecture of the bottom part is Roman. The architecture of the top part, which is the dome, is Persian, because Persians managed to figure out how to build giant domes that don't collapse, like things that are bent, like they're not are not straight and are this big and don't collapse, was look like a miracle that the Persians figured out how to do, right? So the Persian Empire had collapsed, and now every mosque you see, if you see a dome, this is the Arabs basically copying this from the Sassanid dynasty that they basically destroyed. And every time you see a mosque now, don't think the dome is the Persian. It's Persian. It's not Arab. It's not. It's not Islamic, right? So the Kaaba is like we look at the Kaaba. You put some rocks on each other, put some bricks on each other, and you have a cube. Good job. That's who's I'm not impressed much. Okay, look at this. Look at the dome, Dome of the Rock, and look how glorious it is, right? So which direction you want to pray to towards a freaking cube in the middle of nowhere, or towards this beautiful dome in the center of religion? I mean, Jerusalem is the center of all Abrahamic religions, like Christian, Judaism. This is it. This is a religious city. What the hell? Like, what is that? What is that over there? Like, what the hell is that? Right? So, like, hey, look, I have the money to build stuff, so I will build something glorious, and people will do the pilgrimage towards Jerusalem, right? But the problem with Jerusalem is that you're copying other religions. Like, you're supposed to have your own unique religion, and this Jerusalem place is actually Christians and Jews have claimed it before you, so it doesn't seem very original. At least Ibn Zubair, his place seems to be some unique to us. Like we are Arabs. We want to feel different from the Persians and the Romans. Why are we this? This just seems like a continuum of their whatever they had before, right? Oh, Gation American, the super chat, thank you, saying LMAA LLMFAO, they should make what? Oh, Game of Thrones-esque drama. Yes, they should. I agree. In fact, guys, I'm going to do that once AI allows me to make movies on this channel. Okay, I am going to turn all of the stories that I'm telling you into 5 minute movies as soon as AI allows me to do that. Okay. So don't wait for Hollywood. We'll just make it here on this channel. Oh yeah, Paul is saying, yeah, you should. You're brilliant. Yeah, you guys like that? You guys like that? I know. I like that. I'm waiting for that to become easy to do. Right. Okay, so where were we? So yeah, so the Dome of the Rock is built, and now we have a competition between the Jerusalem and Mecca. But at some point, so he makes inscriptions on it, on the Dome of the Rock, inscriptions that eventually turn into the Quran, even though the verses in Dome of the Rock are different from the verses in the Quran, which is this could be its own freaking show. This could be its own freaking show, because the Dome of the Rock is proof that Islam is false, because the verses in the dome is different from the Quran. And the verses in the Dome of the Rock heavily emphasize on Jesus being not divine himself, but being prophet of God, which shows that we're still in the phase that we are not our own unique religion. We are still just a version of Christianity that doesn't believe Jesus is God. We're still in that phase in this area, right? It takes another 20 years until this whole Arabs start building Islam as their own religion, right? So what happens later? Basically, let's go to 692, which is basically around this time that Islam now is actually taking shaping, right? 692, Umayyads actually capture Mecca. They kill the rebel. They kill Ibn Zubair. They crucify him. They had catapult the Kaaba. Once they burned it, and now they completely destroy it. At first, they burned it, in 683, they burned it accidentally. In 692, they completely uh, destroyed the Kaaba. But now that they have the Kaaba, they realize after the past, I don't know, 10 years, that the Kaaba's authorities has worked for Zubair. So they rebuild it instead of completely dismissing it. And now the Kaaba becomes the official direction of prayer. And this is where it makes sense to say, put this in the mouth of your narrative into the mouth of God by suggesting that, hey, we just, God redirected the direction of prayer. It was not me. It's not Abdul Malik. It's God, which is interesting because God, apparently God did it at the time of Muhammad, but people are, but what actually happened that it changed, the direction changed at the time of Abdul Malik. Oh, we got another super chat. But anyways, I need to finish this within the 10 minutes because I'm doing the same topic in Persian on our Persian channel for mostly an Iranian audience. Sam is saying, Happy Jerusalem Liberation Day. It's a bit ironic to learn about Mecca and Jerusalem Day. Yes, it's we're learning about Jerusalem as well. Yeah, that's very interesting. I didn't know it's Jerusalem Day. That's a happy coincidence. And thank you, Sam, for the super chat. All right, so let's go to 692 because this is where everything happens. This is where Kaaba becomes a center. So now that they have Kaaba, now that Zubair is dead, now that they have captured Mecca, they decide this to become the direction of prayer and the center of pilgrimage and the main center of Islam, of their now they call the religion Islam. But why? Why do they do this? Why do they not just stick with their original story that Jerusalem is the main city? Why Jerusalem? Why went Mecca? Because during these 10 years, Abdul Malik and his advisor Hajjaj realized how useful the Kaaba is. They watched Zubair make up stories that nobody could verify because he was making up stories about things that happened in the middle of nowhere. And you're like, hey, that's actually like, we cannot make up these stories for Jerusalem. People were here. If I say Muhammad was here, or Muhammad was in Petra or in Jerusalem, people are like, no, it wasn't. Like, we were here. Our people were here. We would have noticed. We would have noticed if there was such a prophet here, like 50 years ago. 50 years ago, there was this guy that came here and told everyone, and he fought these wars. There was this planned assassination. There was these tribes here that did this and then did that, and they made him a leader of that city. And did this happen? No, I mean, you're not talking about 1,000 years ago or 200 years ago. You're talking about 50 years ago. We live here. My grandpa would have told me if there's such a thing happened here. So we cannot do this about Jerusalem. And Zubair was having so much fun in Mecca, making up his stories left and right. And this Abdul Malik was like, I'm so jealous. Why can he make up all these stories and we cannot? Because nobody would believe us if we mentioned this about Jerusalem. So once they got Mecca, they were like, you know what? Ha! Let's make Mecca. Actually, he was right. Mecca is the center, so that we could become the story writer. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of desert. People are like, hey, nobody could come fact check us anymore. Again, that's why I'm saying the sand, the empty sands of the desert became a white canvas for the Umayyad dynasty to be able to paint the entire religion on. Okay? Isn't that beautiful? That's very interesting to think about. So we have this, what you could refer to as the great rewrite. The great rewrite. You like that? Huh? The great rewrite happened between 700 and 820 CE. So basically spanned over the Umayyad and the Abbasid dynasty. So the Umayyads basically laid the foundations. The main principle of Islam started with Abdul Malik, about Muhammad, this religion of Islam, with the name of us Muslims, with the Quran being our book, with our origin story being in Mecca, Muhammad being the prophet of this religion. These are the foundations that were laid during the Umayyad dynasty. And then all these stories that we know about Muhammad and his life, That didn't happen during this time. That came later, mostly during the Abbasid dynasty, which could be the next stream I do, if you guys want. Yes, I could do the next stream about the details that were added during this after the Umayyad dynasty went away, and how it's very interesting that the details of Muhammad's story shows how evil the Umayyads were. Okay. Which shows that the stories of Muhammad were not written during the Umayyad dynasty because they wouldn't have made their ancestors look so bad. It was written during the Abbasid dynasty because they were writing the stories of Muhammad to challenge the Umayyad dynasty. That's why the family of the Umayyads during Muhammad's time were the villains of Muhammad's story, because the Abbasids wrote those stories, not the Umayyads. So the scholars under the Abbasids eventually they were the ones made the main people who were canonized the biographies of Muhammad and the Hadith and the Sunnah and everything. So the new stories appear, and again, they didn't change the foundations. So Mecca being the main huge trade hub and the center of the religion, they kept that. The stories about the Qurayshi tribe became more powerful and rich. Abraham and Ishmael's story, building the Kaaba, that became canonized. But the details were added later, which is, again, maybe we'll do that on the next stream. Okay. Or maybe the next stream I want to do something about the jinns. Let me know which one I should do next. Maybe I'll do a jinn story and about where the jinns came from. Okay, the demons in Islam, where did that came from, and look at it historically. Let me know if you want me to do that, right? Because that, guys, people don't understand how important, because jinns in Islam is just something that people think it's just a side, it's just the demons in Islam, right? But they're actually a major part of Islam. Okay, like they are basically the gods of Arabs. I mean, I'm exaggerating, before Allah. Let me know if I should do that first in the next story. Actually, in the next live stream. But let me actually do the super chats, and then I need to go get ready for the Persian show very fast. I'm running out of time. We got a super chat. Thank you so much, Diamond Encrusted Abdullah. Thank you, saying Baal, the god of Saturn, the author of the Talmud, Bible, and Quran, created us in his lab, manipulating DNA of primitive man to serve him. He placed the moon in our sky. It doesn't rotate like natural moons. Okay, that is an interesting story movie that we could make with AI pretty soon. Diamond Encrusted Abdullah, make that movie with AI as soon as it becomes cheap to do so. I will watch that movie. I will watch that movie. Okay, thank you. Guys, we're all going to be movie makers soon. Okay, and everybody who's a YouTuber could become, basically, is going to be a competitions of who has the best movies. Oh, we got another super chat by Diamond Encrusted. Diamond Encrusted Abdullah saying, Angel. By the way, Gene, can you reduce the start comments to three only, because I have to go get ready for the Persian show, because we got more super chats today than I anticipated, and thank you for that. I'm just saying, Armin, it's rent. It's what? I don't know what you're talking. Oh yeah, it's raining. Oh yeah, it's raining money. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, guys. This is very generous. Diamond Encrusted Abdullah saying, Angel Gabriel Kate Jesus and guided Muhammad. Ramadan blood sacrifices feed him. He brought back black magic and the occult to this planet. Baal stole the name of Allah from the lions he used to hunt and kill. Okay, yeah, I will definitely. Okay, Diamond Encrusted Abdullah, where are you going to release this movie? Do you have access to AI to make this movie? I love it. It's fantastic. I will watch that movie. Please make that movie and come here and let us know where have you released it. Okay? Again, Anti-Islam is saying we need this movie. And Gene, sorry for me telling you to reduce the comments to 3. Let me see. There is no Mecca on any Roman and Byzantine maps. Exactly. Primus versus Unicorn was saying that. Let me actually respond to this. Ginga is saying, but why would they embarrass so much? Why would they embarrass so much a fake prophet instead of portraying him in a good light? You have verses that he is covered with semen or having sex with Indians in the desert. It makes no sense. It makes complete sense. In fact, Ging, I could do a stream on that. First of all, a lot of the things that you consider embarrassing, Ging, you have to understand that it could as easily be as things that people did during the Abbasids or Umayyad dynasty, and they were they gave it, they said that Muhammad did it to sell it as something that is not embarrassing. Because hey, if Muhammad did it, it's okay. Like imagine you wanting I don't know, a 9-year-old wife, and people are like, hey, okay, I mean, we married him young, but that's too young. So let's just make hadith saying Muhammad did that, right? That's the use case, right? And Diamond in Encrusted Abdullah saying Angel Gabriel is a demon and extraterrestrial. Okay, yeah, this is interesting. Yeah, I'm sold, and thank you for so many super chats. I will definitely watch that movie again. Please make that. Thank you for supporting this channel. Sam is saying, is this theory taught in Western universities in Israel? I don't know anyone who mentions this theory. This is I've been to Israel. I talked to scholars in Israel that give you exactly this narrative. This is not very people don't hear about it because the Islamic narrative still has the upper hand. But within academic circles, this is exactly the narrative. And I actually talked to scholars in Israel about this. And also, okay, and this is the last super chat, and then I have to go. Diamond Encrusted Abdullah saying the artifacts are in Saudi Arabia, in Saudi Arabian's Area 51 vault. Okay, this are you writing this, guys? Somebody take a note, because if Diamond Encrusted Abdullah doesn't make this movie, I'm going to be devastated. Okay, somebody keep taking and writing these down. Saudi Arabia's Area 51 vault. Okay, the artifacts are there. Okay, cool. All right, guys, I have to go. I only have like 5 minutes to get ready for the next show, which is my Persian show. And let me see, Jean. I want to just do one more comment that Jean has started. Paul is saying also clues in the Quran about description of Mecca, which describes it as being like Petra, not Mecca, in desert. So yes, green vegetation. Yeah, exactly. And there's also hadith, green vegetations, Petra. Equals Petra water source needed for major population trading cities. Yeah, and even if you read the stories of Muhammad, we're talking about like olive trees, which even if Saudi Arabia has gone completely dry since then, and before it was could grow olive trees there, or if they had farmed there, the roots and the seeds would have survived. And none of that is around Mecca, but you could find that around Petra. Absolutely true. That's another actually clue. That's another clue. Yeah, I mean, if you read the stories of Muhammad, people in Mecca were supposed to be farming. Like, where in Mecca are you supposed to farm? Guys, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go basically do the same content on the Persian channel for the Iranian, mostly Iranian audience. I say mostly Iranian because we have some other Persian speaking people as well from Afghanistan, from Tajikistan watching sometimes as well. But this is people in Iran, they love this content, by the way, the people. So it's very useful to do this on the Persian channel as well. All right, guys, like this stream, please support this channel. So maximum support for this channel can be done for free, even though we got a lot of super chats today, which I'm really grateful for. Thank you, guys. But there are also free ways to support this channel: liking the stream, subscribing, hitting the bell notification, leaving the comment, and also sharing this video. All of that together, let's actually count. Liking probably takes 1 second. Okay, subscribing 1 second. Hitting the bell notification takes 1 second. That's 3 seconds of your time there. So and then leaving a comment probably could take 10 seconds. So that's 13 seconds. And sharing probably takes 5 seconds. So let's just round it up. 20 seconds. With 20 seconds, you could basically do maximum support for helping this channel grow in 20 seconds, which I would really appreciate. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And till next show. Bye. Subscribe, hit like.